Hey everyone, this is the Charisma podcast where we talk all things jewelry related. Today we've got episode 2 of our conversation with Jeff, the former head of production at Harry Winston. Now, last episode we talked about the production process. We saw a really cool presentation that we made. We had some photographs from the factory. We learned a lot about the production techniques and some really cool ways to make jewelry. Now, this episode we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk craziest stories. So we're going to ask Jeff some really awesome questions. He's going to tell us some insane stories, some extremely expensive pieces of jewelry that he worked on for auction houses and famous people, royals. It's a really, really awesome conversation. We really appreciate you guys tuning in, and we're going to jump right in.
Cool. So this is great. It was a great kind of walkthrough of the manufacturing process. So a couple of things. One, kind of we've talked about this a little bit, Joseph, is this would be great to obviously they can watch the video now, and we can kind of put this in various formats. But I think getting some of these components like tools and the flask and the et cetera, and kind of going around with that when you're visiting stores, that would be a cool experience for a lot of the stores to be able to touch and feel, for sales associates to touch and feel that and feel part of that process and kind of understand that in a different way. It's just it's so removed right now. I think most sales associates don't understand this process at all, and it becomes hard then to connect with the consumer on that level. And I think kind of going and showing them that show and tell and touch and feel, and I think they'd be able to talk about that process and the custom process and all of that in a different way.
Yeah, and don't be surprised if you do that and all of a sudden you have people asking you to send them some waxes and some of this and some of that.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's a
Yeah.
real selling point. It really is.
One of our best things we ever did is we started doing the giant wax molds. We'd send those out to stores so they could put them on top of their showcase. It's like a foot tall wax mold of a ring.
Yep.
And
Yep.
what a basic thing, right? But you'd be shocked. We used to do that. I worked at a retail store for a long time, and we had this big giant wax mold, and I is kind of leave it on the table at the top of the showcase, and a guy and a girl or whoever is walking around shopping, and someone's gonna pick that up. Like someone's gonna go, "What on earth is this?" And then
Yep.
boom,
Yep.
you're able to say, "Hey, this is the wax. This is one of the first steps of the manufacturing process." And then, we didn't really know, like Neil said, we didn't really know any of the specifics or really anything that we just went through about it. We just knew wax molds turn into rings, because I can get a wax mold of a ring to try on. So I knew that was the first step. And they were so interested in that, and that was so cool in and of itself. And then now imagine having like a thorough understanding of all the insane things that go into the manufacturing process of this work. And imagine the value adding possibility that you can have as a store, as an associate or manager or whoever, when you're able to go into so much more detail than the competition across the street or the K's Jewelers down the road or whatever, when you're able to talk about the manufacturing process, all the quality control steps, and I mean, you're just gonna sound, as a team, you're gonna sound like a superstar. Like there's no way you're not gonna want from these guys. They know the whole deal on how it's made.
Yep.
So that'd be really
Absolutely.
cool too. Yeah. Send me a flask, dude. Send me a big crucible. I'll carry
So-
around a truck.
Yeah.
I'll carry like a big green egg crucible thing, and we'll burn some rings in the. Dude, we'll catch the entire town on fire or something.
There you go.
Great.
Hey, listen,
Exactly.
if you're going to do it,
Well, who wants to see how hot platinum
might
can
as well
really
get
get?
Set off
Click,
little
click, click.
volcanoes.
might as well
Yeah,
get the fire department involved too.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Right. They need to practice metallurgy fires. How do you put
There
out?
you
Yeah,
go.
Yeah.
blacksmith shop catches on fire. What do you do? Pretty good. Yeah, that's cool. I really, I think this is awesome. I think this is kind of a
So,
gateway to a really cool next chapter in the industry where consumers are going to be able to be, well, consumers and retail stores are going to be able to be way more knowledgeable about the manufacturing process and how cool, interesting, and important that is. The variances between good manufacturing and not as good manufacturing and kind of what that can
Yeah.
mean to the consumer. It's going to be really cool.
Yep. Yep.
yeah. So, would like to maybe ask Jeff a few questions about kind of cool stories and projects that he's been involved with. But actually, before that, one thing came to mind before we jump into that. Jeff, can you talk a little bit about mill grain?
Mm.
Kind of how it's done, what kind of some of the nuances are in terms of how well that's done, etc. The difference between hand mill grain and CAD mill grain.
Yeah.
It's such a widely used, such an attractive kind of design element, and a cool way to set things apart. And so, would love to hear a little bit about that. So
Yes.
um, we were just going to talk about mill grain. So a question was kind of, it's a pretty popular design element. And it's fairly nuanced, and so wanted to hear from you regarding kind of how it's done, the nuance that's involved in terms of the quality of mill grain, and
Okay.
then hand versus CAD mill grain, and
Traditionally,
all of those things.
mill
Yeah.
grain was done one of two ways, either by the engraver, um, or on a lathe. And the way the ring was prepped was sort of a like a bright cut, like a hand cut bright cut by a setter, and
Mm-hmm.
then the mill grain tool is like an
Mm-hmm.
engraving tool with like a little wheel that's got recesses, um, concave recesses, and the wheel is placed on the top of the knife edge and rotated around the ring on that knife edge. And so what happens is the little wheel actually cuts down into the knife edge and leaves those beads raised. Um, for somebody like an art carved or somebody like that who's making these things in production, they take that tool and they put it in the lathe in the position of the cutting tool, and the ring is turned mechanically on the lathe, and then the tool is basically placed on the ring as it's rotating, and it's cut in that way. Um, the tools come in various sizes, so there's sometimes super delicate mill grain, and sometimes, depending on the scale of the piece, bigger. I'm not sure exactly how many different size tools there are. I've cut them by hand occasionally myself, but generally, um, I would typically give it to the engraver and let him do it, because I just happen to have a really good hand engraver and he does it. Um, I don't really have experience doing it on the lathe, but it can be cut that way. Um, on the CAD, uh, it's pretty easy to create on the CAD. The tough part is cleaning it without killing the detail. Um, it's a very the beading can be very, very delicate. Um, the advantage to cutting it by hand is that it's done like at the last step or the next to last step, so you really don't have to worry about very much over polishing, over finishing. Um, the origin of it, I don't know. I really don't know when it came into being. If I recall correctly, the first pieces that I'm seeing would have been sort of the Georgian, uh, like very ribbony, uh, delicate hand, platinum work, a lot of open work kind of stuff. Dating that, I'm gonna say, like late 1800s, guessing. I can reference it. Origin of mill grain. I'm curious now.
So when you're doing it by hand, that's interesting. So you're cutting away the metal. It's a tool. You're not like adding you're not adding a
You're
bead
not really
of
cutting.
gold in a line
You're not really
shape.
removing. It's more like you're compressing. You know. I have a
Okay.
couple of mill grain tools sitting around here someplace. I can take them and leave them with Neil because it's not like I'm going to use them anytime soon. Um, and he can send them to you. As soon as you see the tool, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. It's just basically the
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
it's just the tool is pressed into that kind of edge, and basically um, changes the
Hmm.
shape of the edge. Really, is what it's doing. Um, I think I've got two or three different size tools here. I'll try to scare them up for you. Shouldn't be a big deal. Um,
Oh, no, that'd be awesome. Wow, no, that's different than I thought. I thought it was I don't know why I thought it was little like beads. I mean, mill grain beads. You kind of think they would just be sort of added or whatever, but it's part of the ring.
yeah.
It's integral to the ring, and you're just sort of forming that shape on the
Yep.
edge with a tool.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And then, like I said, with the CAD, the hard part is not killing it. Because it's a delicate.
Hmm.
When you do it by hand with that tool, it's like it's pretty crisp. And the tool itself leaves the mill grain quite bright, so really it needs just a light buff to touch it up. When you're doing it in CAD, you're starting with that rough cast surface, so you have to cut through that first, um, and then clean it up. You know.
Yeah, that's so we do a hand milligrain. Um, I think people do it in CAD. We've experimented with that. It doesn't give us the same results because you're casting that surface and then you're cleaning the surface, and part of the whole kind of the point of it is
Yes.
the surface that those fresh beads, and it just looks very different. Um, so that's yeah, and you know I find it kind of it's just cool that it's a hand process is done at the very end of the whole process, and it's just
And it looks
there's just
finer.
something cool
The
about
mo-
that is
the
done
uh,
by hand.
the CAD process looks has a tendency to look a little heavy handed.
Yeah,
It's very hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard to duplicate or replicate um, something that's hand cut in a you know uh, in a digital process. It's just not the same. You know, it's the same thing like it's
Yeah.
the same thing like engraving,
Yeah. And
initials in
yeah.
CAD, and then you have to
Go ahead.
clean it. So you're never gonna have that
Right.
same hand as you would have. Yeah, it just won't happen.
Mm,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, it's just, I mean, there's something cool. We talk about this a lot, Joseph and I, and this is something cool about, we talked earlier about CAD and all the things that CAD has made possible that literally were not possible or not accessible, um, to the consumer before CAD, before technology, between CAD, 3D printing, all this, renders, all this advanced technology. And then there's something cool that about kind of marrying that with something that's still done by hand and
Yeah, I
cannot be
mean,
replicated
look, the
by a
the
machine.
combination of CAD with the handmade work, um, it you can achieve just about anything. You know, I've been with these new
Yeah,
add-ons,
yeah,
add-on programs. I'm shocked at the level of natural. I don't know what to call it, a natural look. I mean, for organics or for animals or for any of this stuff, the textures that can be achieved, and if I had time, I would love to learn. But doing CAD work is like learning a language. If you don't use it, you lose it, and it's like you need that vocabulary. Um, I understand the process, and I understand. I think I'd be really, really super good at it, um, because I understand the classic hand technique for making these things, and I understand how to apply it. But without using it all the time, you just don't have the continuity that you need to be fluent in it to maintain, the fluidity of it. Um,
mm,
you know, just the way it is. But use, with a good operator combined with the the uh, the classic theory and technique. I mean, there's really nothing you can achieve and make it look like it's completely handmade. Really, I mean,
Mm.
like I said before, somebody says it looks like it was made in
nice.
CAD. My response is, oh, you got the wrong operator, because it's achievable, I think,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Great. That's kind of a good segue uh, for us, and to talk about maybe some of the interesting projects, fun projects, and stories that you've worked
Yeah.
on
Wow.
in the past. Yeah.
Sorry, man. You
What,
gotta spill the beans.
Joseph, do you have specific
Where does that start? Yeah.
lightning round here?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, you know, we don't know I don't know what to actually specifically ask about, but I feel like there's got to be some immediate things that probably come to mind. I mean, like for example, the last podcast we did, you kind of said like one sentence and then we like quickly moved on, and I was like, wait, what? You're talking about flying like across the world to like test fit a necklace on some like royal family. Like, and I don't, you don't have to get into names or anything, but I mean, what? That's crazy. Some of that stuff, and so like I don't know, craziest piece, like most expensive stone
So
kind of thing. We want to know the good
All
stuff.
right.
yeah,
Uh, most
yeah.
expensive stone. That's a good question. Because
Or craziest stone
yeah,
on the
yeah,
lead up to
that's
that.
there.
Just
There've been a few.
wildest.
Yeah.
Good,
Um, there was
excellent.
one that came from a huge piece of rough. I think it was like I'm gonna say it was somewhere between 500 and 800 carat a piece of rough, and I can't I can't say who owned it,
Oh wow.
um, but it was a New York diamond
Yeah.
family, and they it was a piece of rough that came from South America and it had been on the market for like 2 or 3 years, and I don't know why nobody wanted to buy it. Maybe the guy was asking too much. I don't know. Anyway, um, somebody I was doing work for bought the rough, um, and recut it to a bunch of stones. The largest one was a 120 carat deflawless oval. Thing was huge. It was like
Wow.
it had a
This is a
heft.
diamond. This is a
Diamond,
diamond.
yeah. Uh, deflawless. Um,
Wow.
simple, mounted in a simple pendant. They sold it. I think, um, if I recall, they paid. Don't quote me. They 8 million is sticking in my head for the rough, and they sold the oval for 12. And this is going back long. This is going back like
Wow.
before. I mean, this is definitely before India. So this is probably that was 2011. This is probably like around 2007 or eight. Um, that was
Wow.
wild. That there was another one that
And
yeah, it was
you
just
made the
and it was just a
mounting. You
real
made the mounting and set the stone in
plain
that
pendant. Um,
plane.
How
Yeah.
crazy. Oh, like, do you like a surgeon just like cold-blooded with those stones? Like, I cannot imagine 120 karat D flawless. Every jeweler that's listening to this right now is tensed up right now hearing that. Like, just setting that stone. I mean, is it nerve-wracking to you when you handle stuff like that now, or is it just kind
I'd
of
be
every
I'd be
day
more
you're
worried if it was an imperfect stone, but deflawless. I'd be worried if there was some kind of a like a knife edge girdle. Um, but if it's cut well and it's a flawless stone, you know, it's easy to get hung up in the money of it. I'm more worried about stupid stuff, like dropping it in my bench pan and having it hit a tool, and chipping it. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you have to be really careful about. Like clean all the tools out of the bench pan, put down a couple of towels, make sure you have all the non-essentials off your bench, um, you know, that stuff. Um,
no jeweler in the history of the world has ever done any of those three things you just said, by the way, I don't think. What do you mean? Clean the bench off before you set a stone?
yeah,
Dude, what are you talking about?
yeah.
What do you mean
I mean,
clear the tools? Yeah.
you know,
I'm kidding.
we
That's pretty, yeah.
we did it. We did a necklace. I'll send you a picture. Um, we did a few of them that were all uh, decolor, flawless, internally flawless, type 2A stones. You know, 100 carat plus total weight. You know, center stones, 8, 9 carat. You know, like that. And we had one in particular that, um, God, I'm trying to remember what happened. I'm trying to remember the sequence of events. Where were we making this thing? We were making it in India, and it was one of those ones where we were making it and the stones were being shipped to us as we were making it. Like we kind of like made it without the stones, but the buyers were out buying the stones. The mounting was made and and the buyers were out buying the stones to plug into the
Oh,
necklace. And yeah, it was
oh my
nuts.
God.
And it was for auction, and a stone got chipped. We did not chip it. We did not chip it.
It
No, it
chipped
got
itself.
chipped. I think it got chipped in Hong Kong. Anyway, they took the stone. God, this is so long ago. They took the stone out, and they took the stone. It was one stone. They took the stone out. They sent the stone to New York to polish it. They sent it back to Hong Kong, and when they were resetting it, they chipped two.
Oh no.
And I was like,
Oh,
"Thank God that wasn't me. Dear God, thank you for not,
yeah.
keep it in Hong
Yeah.
Kong." So anyway,
Yeah. You got
yeah. So
so
I
yeah.
got a call. Um, it's my favorite Neil line. I got a call, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Jeff gets calls like from all kinds of calls. I got a
and
call. Every story starts with "I got
It
a
does.
and
call."
It
it, and the voice
does. Yeah.
said, uh,
Yeah.
I need you to go to New York tonight." I said, okay. And I need you to reset two stones. Okay. And they're chipped. I said, yeah. And I need you to reset them in the same necklace. And then I need you to take them to Hong Kong. I was like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And
Oh,
this crazy stuff used to happen. So it's like, okay, you know. So I went to New York.
did they blindfold you on the drive into New York
I wish
building? What
there were
building it
parts
is?
of this I wish they had blindfolded me for. Um, so I went in, and when I got there, the stones had been polished, and uh, how the hell did this go? I had to take. I got the stones, and I had to go. I went to a friend's shop, and I asked if his setter could please. I know what it was. There was a prong that was cracked, and I was going to set the stones myself, but I didn't have. I needed him to repair the prong on one of the settings. So I go into the shop, and it's a guy I know forever, and one of his top jewelers, and he takes the necklace and he puts it like the necklace is complete except for these two stones that were chipped. And he takes the necklace out of my hands and he
Yeah.
puts it on his bench on the soldering pad, which was a ceramic stone. And I just about had a heart attack. And I said, wait.
Oh.
And he looks at me and he goes, what are you worried about? It's a diamond. I was like, yes, that's exactly
Oh
what I'm
my
worried
God.
about. And I said, I said,
Yeah.
wait a minute. And I said to my friend, I need to wrap these stones. And I wrapped every single stone. And this guy thought I was nuts, right? And I said, no, you don't understand. And my friend looking at me, and I told him the story. I said, these stones have been chipped twice. I said, this necklace has a black cloud over it. And he goes, oh my God, wrap them twice, right? And and I did it, and finally we got this thing finished, and we got it out, and I got on a plane that night, and I flew to Hong Kong, and I took it to the auction house. But it was like, what could go wrong, you know? And Hong Kong was not a big
Wow.
deal because it's a free port. At the time, it was a free port, so I could carry it with me and walk in with it, and there's no duty, no nothing, you know. I mean, that was one. We did one. We had another one where we did a matched pair of. We had somebody bought a crystal. It was huge, and it was a matched pair of 30-carat fancy yellow cushions that were accurate. They were like matched to within a tenth of a millimeter of each other from every measurement. And we made the earrings,
Wow.
and at one point, it was one of those pieces where you make the prongs heavy in the beginning because you know the stones are going to come out a million times. They're going to go in and out and in and out and in and out to show the stones. So I was in the owner's office, the guy who owned the stones, and I was with the guy who was his like top diamond guy, who's like who treated these diamonds like they were his children. It was hysterical, but the guy was like dead serious about his job. And
Wow.
we're sitting in his office, and the guy's
Yeah.
standing behind his desk, and he picks up these two diamonds like they're golf balls, right? And he has them in one hand, and he starts doing this. And my friend just about had a heart attack. He was like, "What are you doing?" Sure
Oh.
enough, he had done. I mean, these things are 30 carats each. He had done this, and they had to be completely repolished because they had
Wow.
just abraded. I mean,
Oh
yeah.
my God. Yeah.
And I,
They touch them
Oh
together
my
and
gosh.
they're not flawless anymore.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. And
Wow.
the tiniest little anything, and then and you've got these like facet junctions rubbing up against each other. You know, um, it was nuts. It was like
Yeah.
and
When you set a flawless diamond, when you set a flawless diamond, I mean, how do you put the prong onto the, I mean, is it just the most careful thing in the world to just lay a prong down onto a flawless
yeah.
stone without messing
I
it up?
mean, yeah. Well, um, I learned a trick a long time ago about when setting because you set a bigger stone, it's a bigger prong, right? Um, and if you
Yeah.
if you intentionally use a thin prong, it looks stupid and it looks like you were avoiding
Mm.
having to, it looks like you were trying to put a thin wire on there so you don't have to worry about setting it. And like I said, if it's a really high clarity stone and the girdle's not cut really to a knife edge, there's not much to worry about. Um, you have to worry more about the stupid shit than chipping a stone. Um,
Right.
yeah,
Rubbing it together
like
with
that.
another stone.
So, um,
When you said when you said you would make prongs really big because you just knew they were going to be
not
taken in
really
and
big,
out,
but a little more
are
than
you
usual.
talking? I mean, do you mean when you make a, okay, got it. So, I mean, when you're making something of that value, you've got these 30 carat stones or whatever and going to auction or whatever. When you put them in a piece of jewelry, is it common or is it a thing that they come out from time to time to show,
Yeah.
to auction them out, or to that's they're made to be
Well,
taken in and out?
I do because I've seen it happen enough times where I've made a piece and it's come back to me to lift it, and then I may not have enough material to reset it, so now I'm like, now I have to repair the piece. But if I ask in the first place, do you think these are going to come
Oh
out?
yeah.
I'll beef the prong up by an extra tenth or tenth and a half of a millimeter, which is enough. And the more important thing is I'll leave them a little bit longer than ordinarily I would, because the longer it is,
Mm,
the less leverage I need to exert on it to lift it. Um, it's an insurance policy to avoid a repair down the line. That's all.
yeah.
And so I ask, is this going to come out, or is there a good chance it's going to come out? Because those kind of stones rarely sell in whatever you put them in. I mean, it's just people have their own idea about what they want
Mm,
to do with them, and they don't really want to buy the piece. I mean, the clusters
right.
that those 230 carats were hanging from were there was probably 20 plus carats in the other six stones there were only six stones in the cluster, probably another 20 carats. They were huge. So, somebody's not going to want to
Wow.
obligate themselves to buy that. I mean, you know, why should I buy an extra 20 carats of goods that I don't really want? I want these two drops. That's what I want.
Right.
And and then also they're going to want to weigh it, and they're going to want to send it to GIA to inspect it to make sure that it's still flawless, and because if it's not, then they need a new certificate. So yeah, it's common for them to come in and out. I mean, it's practicality, you know, and etiquette. I mean, nobody's going to write you a check for flawless if it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So I ask, and yeah, that was something. Um, crazy stuff, you know. When I worked at Carbon French. I remember we just had ridiculous stuff all the time, and my boss came out one day from his office, and you could tell when he misplaced it because he was just like looking all over the place, like just looking, looking, and turned out that he had been in his office and whatever, went out of his office, came back into his office, and there was this important emerald ring that was just gone. And we looked and we looked and we looked and we
Oh,
tore the place apart. I mean, we just, looked, couldn't find it. And it was just weird. And everything was cameras, everything. He rolled back to videos, nothing. Nobody was in the office. Um, Nobody took it. We knew that because no one was in there. And
how big was
probably
this?
20 plus carats. It was big. And it was like,
Oh,
one of those freaks of nature that was like super clean and old mine Colombian and super green, and they couldn't find it. And I mean, everyone there had been there forever, so it wasn't like we were pointing fingers at anyone. And like 2 weeks later, the cleaning lady was in, and she like she was sweeping the floor, and all of a sudden, you saw this thing go across the floor, and it like rolled under the heat vent and under the radiator and behind the heat pipe, apparently. And we figured that
Oh
when we
my
looked at the
God.
video, and we figured that when he stood up and he went, he had like one of those old desks that had like the retractable, that like pad thing that would slide out.
Mm,
Yeah. And we figured that when he got up,
mm.
he had his back to the
Hmm.
camera, and when he slid out from behind his desk, he must have checked the thing with his hip, and the thing must have like rolled down, but he was in front of the camera, so we couldn't see where the thing went or that it even fell,
Mm,
right? And there it was. 2 weeks
right.
later, it like rolled out from under the radiator. I mean, I don't know
Wow.
what kind of line he was
Wow.
giving to the client for 2 weeks to, you know. I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall for that one.
No, what are
Yeah,
you to
oh,
say?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. What
yeah.
are you to say? Yeah.
Crazy,
Yeah. It just
crazy,
disappeared.
crazy
Wow.
stuff, happened, and just to happen all the time. But it's just nerve wracking, you know, and then of course,
What
sorry,
piece are
go
you
ahead.
most?
No, it's
Oh,
just
go ahead.
it's
Sorry. Go ahead.
just you're
Oh, no, you go ahead.
you
Finish
know
your thing.
you have to trust the people you work with, and there's etiquettes, like you don't touch other people's benches, and you don't take their tools, and you don't, if
Mm.
it's not yours, don't touch it. It's not your job, stay away from it. Don't be curious.
We used to get in so
Yeah,
much
like
trouble in the store. Yeah, we used to get in so much trouble in the
Yeah.
store. We'd have a customer come in and they'd have a ring, and it needs something. It's like, okay, are you gonna check it in and wait like 3 days for the jeweler to come back in, or do I just kind of grab his little rawhide hammer and kind of hit it real quick and send them on the way on their way? And if you didn't put that hammer back within a millimeter of where it
yep.
was and somehow replicate the dust on top of it, you were done. You were fighting. You were
Yeah,
in. It was bad.
you
It
were
was
in
not. It
deep
didn't
doo
go
doo.
well. And I think that's everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's everywhere. But
I worked.
yeah, that's true. What piece are you? It doesn't have to be the highest value, but like, what are you most proud
Oh,
of
the
that you've had a
objects.
hand in? Like, what do you think is the most
Yeah, the
coolest? Yeah.
objects, the
What is it?
the clocks, um, and the lamps. Yeah. I'll give you a website. One second, because there's a show right now at the where the hell is it? New York. It's at the New York Historical Society, um, and this is the book from the show, Enchanting Imagination. Um, okay,
Wow.
so uh, in the late '40s, immediately following World War II, two guys, one was French, one was Swiss, um, came to New York, and one was named Andre Chervin, the French guy, and the other Swiss guy was named Serge Carponce. And they put their surnames together, and they came up with Carvin, and then called it Carvin French, and it became um, one of the premier workshops on the planet back then. And they were doing like it was really the first European workshop in New York. and they were doing everybody. Um, in particular, initially they were like the only guys around doing hard enamel for people like Schlumberger, Verdura, Tiffany, but they were also doing Cartier, Van Cleef, all of them. And at one point, they had multiple workshops, and I didn't know this until recently because of the show. Um, Chauvin had like 200 people working for him. The place was huge. Um, Fast forward, um, to make a very long story short, one of my mentors was an American guy who had um, gone to Europe to do a graduate degree in old languages. He was like an art history major in the States, and then he went to Paris. And while he was there, I don't know, through some series of events, he did an apprenticeship at Cartier. Um, Came back to the States, um, had some connections in New York that ultimately led to these two guys. So he was connected with this workshop. Um, he lived in all places, Allentown, Pennsylvania. Why? I don't, whatever. But that's where I grew up, and I met him, and I studied with him. And I went to art school. I got out. I had worked for myself in Philadelphia for a while, and I was coming to New York to have certain pieces engraved um, by a guy who actually he's still working today, but just a brilliant hand engraver he was like the New York switchboard, knew everybody and their sister. And I was bringing these.
Wow.
I had a client I was duplicating antique watch cases for. He would buy dilapidated cases that had fine movements like Vacherons and Pateks, um, back like way before waterproof or anything. Like these were like clamshell cases that were literally hand fabricated. And I would bring them to New York because this
Wow.
guy was engraving for those watch companies and knew how to duplicate the script. And that's why I came. And so the whole thing kind of came full circle where the guy who was Chauvin's passion was making these objects and boxes and clocks and crazy stuff like that. And Dominic the engraver did all the engraving for him. So one day I come in to have something engraved, and he says, would you consider moving to New York? And I said, well, I don't know. And he said, well, one of the guys who works for Andre is retiring, and he's looking for somebody to work on the clocks. And I was like, yeah, why not? Right. And I knew of him, but I had never met him or anything. And I said, yeah, why not? So by the time I got home, at that time I was living in Philadelphia, because that's where I'd gone to school. And by the time I got home, Chauvin had called and left a message with my wife. And we spoke and told him what I was doing. And he said, why don't you come up to New York? He said, you don't have anything to lose. Um, why don't you come up and work with me for a while? So I came to New York and I did, and I knew absolutely nothing. Thought I was a genius, and I got there and I knew like nothing. Um, anyway, apparently I knew enough to work for him, and the first thing they gave me was this clock to work on. And I joke about napkin sketches. I'll show you the sketch one day I was given, and I'll show you the finished clock, and you'll laugh. Um, anyway, I worked with a team of like 5 or 6 guys to make this thing, and those were my favorite pieces. And um, I didn't realize, I had no idea. I probably worked on 5 or 6 pieces during the 10 years I worked for him. I had no idea how extensive his collection of these things was, because he did these things for himself. He really did it for the hell of it. I had no clue. I thought they were for collectors or they were sold. Well, this show that's now at the New York Historical Society is the entire collection of his pieces. He's in his 90s now, still kicking. Um, so yeah, go online and
Wow.
check out the New York Historical Society, and um, the object, you'll see it immediately. The objects of Andre Chervin. Um, and so they had been bugging him for years to do a show, and I don't know what the deal was. I mean, I still stay in touch with his nephew, Sylvan. We're friends. Um, and they got it together and did the show, and it's there until March. So if you happen to be in New York, you try. It's like on the Upper West Side someplace. But it's a beautiful collection of crazy stuff, and those are the pieces that um, I'm most proud of, because, first of all, the team of guys that I worked with, uh, they were all older than me, and I learned so much. Like there was the crazy lapidary from China who was a stone carver. He came from a family of classic jade carvers, and um, you know the guy who did all the faceted cutting lapidary, and the German setter, and just a bunch of really really interesting people. And the thing that was really cool about this stuff is that there really wasn't any blueprint when we made them. He would have these like ridiculous thumbnail sketches, and because it was for him, he didn't really care if it took like however long it took. We would make it, and if we had to shelve it for 3 months while he was thinking about the next move, he would do it. And then to like
Wow.
literally, I got this book like 2 months ago. The show literally just opened, and
Wow.
I got this book, and it was like, my God, I had no idea how extensive this collection was, and it spans like 50 years. Um, so yeah, that was.
Wow. So you actually just found out, like recently found out how widespread and how important and how vast the stuff that you kind of started working
Yeah,
on back
I
then
had no clue, and
became.
it's interesting because one of my best friends, who I know from for like I must know him for 30 years, um, is very very good friends with him and with his daughter, um, and the daughter comes in almost every day now because she's trying to sell the entire collection. She's an attorney. I mean, she's off doing her own
Wow.
thing, but um, anyway, my friend Bob is really, really good friends with them. And he's the one who told me about the show. I had no clue. I didn't know anything about it. He said, "Oh, you gotta, did you hear about?" Oh, I know what he said. He was like,
Wow.
"Oh yeah, I went to the opening last night." I said, "What opening are you talking about?" He said, "Oh, Chervin's show." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he told me, and I was like, and he brought me a catalog. He pulls the catalog out and gives it to me. I was like, "Holy shit, look at this thing!" And I mean, it's amazing stuff. Um, you can actually order a catalog.
Are
Let's,
these kind of like I mean, I'm just in my head, I'm just imagining like super ornate, like Fabergé egg looking clocks and like table clocks and gold. Is
Yeah,
that
well,
kind of
yeah.
the, I mean, I'm
Here,
gonna
I'll
look it
show
up
you.
and we'll see what
I
it,
mean, I'll hold this up and you can kind of see. I mean, this is
yeah,
one of the lamps.
flash us. Yeah. Oh my
I mean, that's
gosh, look at
opal.
that.
That shaft is opal.
Wow.
I mean, an amazing piece of, yeah, it's crazy
Wow.
stuff, right?
So that, yeah, because that looks like, okay, I see that. Okay, it's a lamp. I can see that. But the whole thing is
Yeah.
made out of like precious materials. It's jewelry. The whole thing is
Yeah.
stones and
I mean, hang on.
material.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff.
Wow.
I mean, this isn't as ornate as at Fabergé, but it's a lapis egg.
Right. Wow. What year and so what years roughly approximately was this that you were doing some of this stuff?
80, 80, 85, 86 through 90.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Um, this one's mine. This green one. Um,
Wow.
now this is kind of
Wow.
cool because the top is a large lozenge of chrysoprase that he found at Tucson. Um, and they split it in half. And then where you can see the dial, right? There is no crystal. What Joe
Hmm.
did was he carved that, he recessed that, and he left about a half a millimeter of chrysoprase thickness so that you're looking through the chrysoprase and you're seeing the dial. And then and that's probably
Oh
about
my
a foot
gosh.
tall. And then that the tall pedestal is a piece of rock crystal that's that's like perfectly hexagonal. Oh. Joe's dead now.
Wow. And so everything is entirely
Yeah,
hand cut,
yeah,
hand everything out of natural
yep.
material, little rocks.
Here's another one that's chrysoprase
Wow.
in ruby.
Look at that. What is the
It's
green?
called,
All
oh,
those red
the red
stones.
is ruby baguettes. The dial is a mosaic mother of pearl, and the whole big green thing is a big block of chrysoprase. God knows what he paid for it.
I have never in my life
So that
seen
so this
anything like that.
was,
That is crazy.
hang on.
Wow.
Oh, he didn't date these things, huh?
That's your
Yeah,
job. You got to date them.
that was, well, it was mid '80s. I thought he would have. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's my. That's
Those look like Smithsonian. I mean, I have this Smithsonian
Incredible.
gym book that
Yeah.
talks about like royal artifacts going back, 1,000 years, and it'll have these big pictures, and it'll have these crowns and scepters with sapphires, and when you look at them, you're like, you don't even consciously understand that those are precious stones. They're so large and
yeah.
so ornate that it looks like a toy or something.
Yeah.
And then it starts talking about it. It's like, oh, that's an 800 carat ruby or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And that's what that stuff looks. I mean, that is unreal. The scale at which that it exists at. That's crazy that you worked on that.
They have their things, like the top of the top plate of the tongue of the box clasp should be point 0.5 thick, like that, right? And I'm like, well, what if you only have room for point 0.4? And then, oh no, it's got to be point 0.5, like
Right.
that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And he was
Yeah.
totally atypical. He'd be like, well, set it upside down, or put another put another 5 stones on the inside of the clock, like that. He would just like think out of the box, and he would.
Wow.
If I got one thing from him that was more valuable than anything, it was he taught me to think, you know, and he yeah, it was cool, and
That's
I would
incredible.
go to him. I
That's
would
really
never go to him. I would never go to him with a question without having at least one option. I learned that like really early on. Don't do that. That's not a good thing to do. So I would try to have at least I would try to have at least two things, if not three options when I would go. And the one time I was working on this like 200 carat carved mobile emerald pendant thing for Fred Layton. It was a very fun piece, and I got to a point with it where I I there were like a million things I could have done with it, and so I went to him and I said, this is my deal. I can do this, I can do this, or I can do this. What do you think?" And he was like, he was like writing on something the whole time I was talking to him, and he looked up at me and he went, "I want it perfect." That was it. I said, "Okay."
That's such an awesome thing to
and
say.
I walked away.
That's
I walked away, and
awesome.
I had this kind of must have had this look on my face, and I walked out, and the foreman looked at me. He goes, "What's the matter?" And I said, "He wants it perfect." He goes, "How lucky you." and I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, okay." Anyway, but
Wow. Yeah.
that's kind of place it
Wow.
was, and it was, um, yeah.
Do you think?
so that's amazing. So you guys will have to excuse me. I have a call in 5 minutes, so you guys should totally continue. But I just want to say, I just want to react to that and say something because that kind of segues into what I wanted to say, which is, you know, these are the kinds of things that make, that's that story, these pieces, these are the kind of things that make jewelry really special, in my mind. um, right. And you have not everybody looks at it this way as art. Right? You have a way of looking at things and describing things and talking about things, about jewelry as art, and it's really
Thanks.
just it's inspiring. I listen to this Rick Rubin a lot. I follow a guy named Rick Rubin, who's a producer, and he's got this podcast. And I was recently listening to him interviewing another guy named Rory Sutherland, who's from the advertising world. It's really incredible, both of them incredible guys. Um, and as Rory Sutherland in particular talks about how, most of the world, the business world, most industries, we've kind of just as a society have kind of pushed forward like uh, rational thinkers, accountants and numbers people and finance and this kind of stuff um, and at kind of at the expense of creative thinkers. Um, and both of these guys, Rick Rubin and Rory Sutherland, just talk about creativity and what that means and how important it is. And I think everyone has some creativity inside of them, but I think a lot of it's been pushed away just by, uh, we've got to make the numbers or, and really in jewelry, I think it, um, more than everywhere else. I mean, it's so important because that is, what is jewelry? What is a diamond? It is, it's important and it's valuable because it's beautiful and it's creative. Um, and so it's really inspiring uh, to work with and talk to people that really get that and that are really in tune with that. And these stories
Oh,
inspire us.
thanks for
So
listening.
thank you for
I've
thank you
been
for taking the time.
really fortunate, um, which is not to say that I don't I don't. It's not to say that I don't understand um, that I pushed myself to do this stuff because I did. I can remember. I can remember one moment in particular when it was time for me uh, to move to New York, and um, I can remember I got on the bus. I came to New York. I was in Manhattan, and I I wanted to call Shervan. This is before this is earlier. And back in the day, we still had payphones on the street. And I stood in front of the payphone probably for 20 minutes or something, staring at the phone and like trying to get my courage up to put the quarter or whatever it was, dime in the dime in the payphone. And at one point I said to myself, if you don't make that phone call, you're a wuss. And I picked up the phone and I made the phone call. I said, what's the worst thing that can happen to you? He's going to say no. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah.
Wow.
Um, but I have been very fortunate to land in the places I've landed and to have had the experiences, and I enjoy sharing them. One of the things I enjoy is you know I really don't like making things anymore. Did enough of that, but I really enjoy teaching people and sharing the knowledge because it's just not there anymore. You can't find it anymore. Um,
Yeah.
and I think about it. It's like, Chavan's in his 90s. I mean, man, he wasn't young when I worked for him. So that's like
Wow.
that makes it worth it, you know. like when it really sucks and you're really having a really having a bad day, and you know, and it's like, oh man,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, don't quit. You can't quit.
Tell the customer that
Thank you.
Colombian emerald is just gone. We don't know where,
Yeah, right.
you don't know where it is. You
Yeah,
could,
it's what?
yeah,
Well,
could have
it's
some
here
tough days.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Could be long gone.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, and it's like,
That's right.
nothing stranger
Wow.
than reality. That we.
Yeah,
What are you gonna do? Shit happens, you know.
that's right.
So yeah,
That's
you
right.
learn
Wow.
you learn to eliminate as many variables as possible because God only knows. You know,
Right.
it's the one you
Right.
ignore that's gonna bite you. It's
Yeah. It's either the most obvious or the one you said at the beginning, there's no way that we can toss that out. There's no way that happened. So, yeah, that's I don't feel like I deserve this conversation. So I really
why
appreciate
not?
your time and just your stories. I mean, and I knew you were gonna say it. You're really cool. I mean, you are super down to earth, cool for the stories that you have and the experience and the work and your background. You somehow remain like one of the most down to earth, like cool people I have ever met already, and we don't even know each other that well, and I already feel that way. So I don't know. That speaks a lot to you.
Thanks.
I think it's really awesome. You're super accessible, like you said. It just an immediate teacher without even trying, just teaching people through just the words and everything. So it's
Yeah, I mean,
really fun. It's
thanks.
really cool.
Yeah, you know, uh, it's not forced. It's just um, that's my philosophy on it. You know, like I'm making we.
Mm.
It's cool stuff. Why not share it? You know, why why not?
That's how we feel.
I mean,
Yeah, that's how we feel. I think that's the best way to do it. Yeah,
yeah, it's kind of
yeah.
interesting.
But
When
yeah,
I went to Nirov, um, somebody in it, somebody asked me. I don't remember who. Um, this was probably a couple of years in, and somebody said to me, how did you get them to do this work? Like, meaning, like the assumption is that they couldn't have done it. Like, how did this work come out
yeah,
of India? Kind of like that. And I think it was actually I think it was at Christie's because they at one point they didn't believe that we were making this stuff in India. And I said, one of the things I realized somewhere along the line was like if you tell somebody they can do something, they can do it. Like if you don't make a big deal out of it, you just you know they can do it. Like you
right.
show them how to do it and
Yeah,
say, yeah, right, and they're like, oh, yeah,
right,
yeah, just and I'm like, well, like,
right,
what's the worst thing that
right,
happens if you screw it up? You do it again, right? And they'd be like, oh, it's okay to
right.
screw up, and I'm like, yeah, of course it's okay to screw up. Like, you think you're gonna start out an expert? you think you're you think you're gonna start out knowing what you're doing?
Right, right,
Why should you be different?
right, right.
So
Yeah, right, right.
yeah, like
Wow.
take the mystery out of
No,
it.
that's true. Yeah, we talk about that when we were. Yeah, we Neil and I talked about this when we were kind of starting these conversations and stuff, and I mean, that's it's like that with anything in life. I guess you know you think about it, you're like, oh man, I don't really know how to. I don't know how do we have a long form conversation with someone about a topic we don't really necessarily know about or whatever, or especially with people we don't we don't always have a lot of
Right.
history with
Yeah.
or whatever. And I don't remember who it was. We started reading all these things, and it turns out the answer is to just start doing it. And you'll mess up or it'll be fine, and then you'll learn, and then you'll get better at it. And it turns out that's pretty much how
Yep.
everyone has done it. So that's I think that's with anything in life. So I one of the things, not to get off on this too much, but that actually is a really interesting, the thing you just said about Indian labor. And you know it's India specifically is an interesting one. But I mean, just overseas, I mean, it's got a little bit of a stigma to it. I'm sure with a lot of industries. And I there's a really interesting thing. This is pretty off topic, but there's a really interesting thing happening in clothing right now that is very similar to what you just said. There's a traditional belief with like handmade, higher end, like men's and women's clothing, shirting and tailoring, that you really want that to say like made in Italy, right? Or made in USA or made in Germany or whatever. And if it says made in India, and a lot of it can be, then that may have a lower quality level or whatever. And as it turns out, although Italians make an amazing shirt, English make an amazing shirt, um, some of the best shirts in the entire world are being made by a company called 100 Hands
Really?
in India. And they are, as we speak,
I
yeah, you
will.
should check them out. Amazing content, 100% handmade buttonholes, hand stitched, hand rolled seams at the bottom, 100% handmade. They one of the highest quality shirts in the world that you can buy. And they are sort of kind of doing what you just said. They're sort of changing that stigma and showing that actually when you have a group of people and you get them on the same page, that they can do what they think they can't do. They can create some of the highest quality products in the world. Then all of a sudden
Right.
you start doing
Right.
it. It's
It's like,
unbelievable. And you can kind of fight that and tell that story. And so that's really cool that you said that about the Indian production, because I really agree with you. It's about the workers and the leadership and and the beliefs that you can do something. And you said something really important, the ability to kind of mess up. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, well, you may have been involved in them, I don't know, but we'll make some really sketchy design for someone. So the we just had this one, she'll probably kill me for saying it. The We did this necklace. It didn't connect at the bottom, so it was like a serpent,
mhm.
kind of looked like a snake. It's like a serpent that kind of wrapped around just the back of the neck, and then sat right here, 2 points right there. And there was various drops of big neck, pave diamonds everywhere. There's a lot of diamonds and big sapphires. And she wanted to make a bunch of jewelry out of this one thing. So we had to create clasps ends that you could connect both sides of the diamond necklace part together, and it would
Mm.
make a diamond choker. You could undo it, and you could add one drop and one not drop in piece, and you would have this kind of elongated offset sapphire drop thing. Then there was an emerald on the other side, and then there was these pearl things that you could. There was all these things that you could turn this necklace together. And I mean, I can't tell you how many we made it, and uh, it immediately, like, we did all the designing you could do in the world or whatever. We thought about this whole thing, and we couldn't at first we couldn't figure out how to get it to
Cool.
not
Yeah.
um, fall. It was too flexible. Yeah, fold. Yeah, it just didn't have any structure. And but if you had structure, then you couldn't make the choker that you needed. So we went through. I mean, these guys, these aren't. Uh, and I say this as a fight against the stigma. These aren't. This isn't some high powered Italian guy that's family lineage shirt maker that's going to look at the bespoke London Savile Row person. These are our guys in India that have been doing this forever. That if you may not, if you look at the situation from way outside, third party, you may go, there's no way they're going to figure this out. But the team of guys, they worked through it, and we figured out the super precise way of how tight the links had to sit together, not dovetail like you said earlier, but a similar way of constructing where it would remain just structured enough to sit against the neckline. We had wax molds made and all this stuff for all the links and everything, and we got it made. She wore it to her gala and it worked great, and everything's wonderful. We're adding more attachments to it now. So, I mean, if you had said at the start of that job is like, oh, you're gonna have a bunch of guys, factory workers in India. They're gonna create this one of a kind multi-piece connectable thing, and it's gonna have to defy the laws of physics or whatever. They would have said, dude, there's not a chance. Like, we're not doing. There's no way. Anyone would have said that. But we it's just the next job in line, and we start working on it, and we problem solve as the things come along, and everyone is kind of a team and works on it, and we get that stuff figured out. So anyway, it's cool that you said that. I wholeheartedly
You
agree
know what?
with that mindset. Um,
It's almost like you're sneaking one past them. Like they're so focused on doing
yeah,
it that they don't think about what they're doing. You know, it's like
yeah. They don't realize. Well, it's kind of like you with those clocks and the things. You probably wasn't that fairly early
very
in your
early,
career. I mean, what if you do you think? I mean, I
very
don't know.
early.
Maybe not. If you had known, if someone had told before you started working on that stuff, you said, "Hey, by the way, these things are going to be featured in the New York Historical Society in one of the most grand, things possible. There's going to be museum catalogs made of it, and they're going to zoom in on your exact work. So, you should know that these are going to be museum pieces that are going to be looked at centuries from now." Do you think your hands would have been shaky?
I
I
would have
mean,
been like,
I would have
"What are
been
you
really
nuts?
intense for someone kind of early.
You want me to do
Yeah,
what?"
yeah, good, crazy. There's like you got the wrong. Yeah, you got the wrong guy here, guys. Dude. Yeah, but no, you just you buckle down and put your head down, and you didn't even realize maybe at the time, and then it
Yeah.
came out just perfect and beautiful and stuff. So
I
that's a
mean, there
really
was a
cool thing.
moment of
Yeah,
trepidation with
I
one
do
of
like
them
that.
where I'll send you no, I'll send you a picture of that one. Um, there was a little
Yeah.
lapis clock that we made. It was about this big, about 3 inches tall. The crystal was a 20 carat
Wow.
diamond. The dial
Wow.
was it was like 20 carat rose cut.
Oh,
The dial was a mother of pearl mosaic that was
oh
cut in
my
the same
gosh.
geometric pattern as the diamond, and the movement folded out from the bottom of the thing, right? That was the first one that I made. And there was a moment like they carved the lapis block first, and then everything had to be built into it. Okay.
Yeah.
And we did the whole thing. And when we when we went to put it together, the lapidary who carved the lapis, it was so funny. We took powdered lapis, mixed it with epoxy and pigment, and the whole thing had to be cemented in. And Joe put the whole thing together, and then he wrapped it with duct tape. And we were like, "What are you
Oh
doing?"
my
And he said, "Well,
gosh.
we have to hold it in place for a couple of days." And I
Whoa.
said, "A couple of days?" And he said, "Yeah, this stuff has to set up." So we were like, he said, because we mixed all the lapis dust in with it, it's not going to set up the same way. It's going to take more time. So we were like, Jesus. So we do this thing, wrapped it up on a Friday, and all weekend we were like, you know, and came in on Monday, and we all sat there like
Oh yeah.
freaking out while he was unwrapping it, and it turned out that the thing worked, but it could just as easily have not. Like all the angles and everything, and we were like, Jesus,
Oh,
man. So yeah,
wow.
but what are you gonna do?
Wow. Wrapped
Yeah,
in
it was
duct
to
tape
hold it in
is
place.
hilarious.
It was, and it
Hilarious.
was like, yeah, high tech, you know?
Wow. You would think they would have some diamond clamp.
Right,
Where's the diamond
exactly.
clamp or whatever? It's well, just use some duct
Yeah,
tape, wrap
I'm
it
like,
around there.
duct
Yeah.
tape.
Wow.
Like Joe, I
That's
was like, Joe, do
crazy.
me a favor, take
That's
that someplace
crazy.
else so I can like at least have the fantasy that there's some wild thing that you're
Yeah.
that you're
Yeah.
doing instead duct
There's
tape.
some
You know?
process for this. There's got to be, yeah, there's got to be a
Yeah.
process. Yeah. Wow.
Okay.
That's
You know.
crazy.
So
Wow. Well, Jeff, this has been so awesome, man. I
my
really,
pleasure.
really
Anytime.
appreciate it. We got we got some serious time. This is
What are you gonna
awesome
do? What are
stuff.
you gonna
So
do with this?
we'll keep going and
What are you gonna do
let's
with the tapes? What are you gonna do with the
do what?
tapes? Do you have a plan?
We're gonna wait like 30 years, and the New York
Right.
Historical Society is gonna do a thing. And yeah, no, the uh, no, there's actually hilariously. I mean, yeah, we have a plan. So the idea with this little series, a couple things. We really wanted the manufacturing stuff. We we needed you. You know so much about it. You're able to explain it, and you're very good with how you explain it and relate it and everything. And I we wholeheartedly think that that's missing. That's a huge
Yeah.
disconnect in the
Right.
retail space. Consumers have no idea, and a lot of the retail stores also don't really know. Um, and so we want to show that. We really want to start getting people interested in craftsmanship and how their stuff's being made and things like that. So that was really important. We're one of the few people that own our factories and can even get this content to someone. So we felt somewhat responsible to do that as a brand
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So that was one thing, and could not be a better person to help with that would be you. So that was really good that worked out. And the second thing is, frankly, I thought you would be really fun to talk to. Like I just assumed the stories would be wild, and the energy would be great, and it would just be really good content. There's could not be a better person. This is our like I think first one we've done. We've got a few set up with some retailers and things that have some jewelers. Turns out jewelers have like really interesting backgrounds. Usually it's like wild, like the Wild West, where those guys usually come from. Um, and so yeah, no, honestly, we don't know. That we just thought, there's we look at the food space and and we talked about the drinks space the last time, and there's so much content being created on a regular basis about food, about
Yeah, that's
chefs
true.
and kitchen spaces and all that stuff. And you look up jeweler. I mean, you heard these stories that you're saying are incredible, and the everyday. I have a funny thing that we talk about with retailers. By the way, I'm still looking for someone to who agree with this. So hopefully, I'll find someone. Everyone agrees until it comes down to time to do it. But my opinion is that you could film a jewelry store for a week, and the content would be better than any reality TV show currently on TV, like by a mile. Just the drama, the the excitement that is people buying the most important things that they'll buy in their lives, the engagement rings and wedding bands and anniversary gifts and things. The excitement of that, the craziness of like memoing in
Right.
stones for that
Yep.
appointment tomorrow, waking up hoping, getting that CAD correct, getting the pricing together, all this stuff, deadlines. A guy comes in and you think you got an awesome thing going on, and then he hits you with that, oh, by the way, I'm proposing in 6 days. That's not going to be like a problem, right? Like right at the cash register after you've done all the work, all the stuff like that, and then getting it to you in 7 days or whatever at that nightmare. Those like I don't know. There's so many moments in that process that are just
Yep.
unbelievably dramatic and in a good way, And like you said, the stones will chip. We had this Montana sapphire. We were cushion cut, elongated cushion cut Montana sapphire. You can imagine how dumb that was to find, and it went into it was an engagement ring. It was a center stone and engagement ring, and we chipped it when we set it. And he was proposing 2 days
Oof.
from then. 2 days
Jesus.
from then. And so there was not another stone. It wasn't an option. Yeah, and so we started I mean, we're sitting there in the store. It's like, what do you tell this guy? I mean, what do we tell him? It's been 2 weeks. He's got 2 days for his engagement. He's got a photographer booked. They're flying somewhere. It's just all this stuff, and so we the sapphire's got this little crack or whatever, and so we ended up shipping it to, I want to say, actually, weirdly, Pennsylvania. I know that's what, I don't know if that, maybe it was New York, but I want to say maybe it was Pennsylvania, and had it recut just barely in to get rid of that where it wasn't in danger anymore. And same day. I mean, we had it overnighted, and then he had to cut it that morning when it arrived, and then immediately ship it back to us overnight. And we had to reset that new size stone in the original mounting and give it to him that same morning so that he could
Jesus.
propose later that day.
Yeah.
Um, and if I'm remembering correctly, I remember meeting him on the interstate with this thing,
Yep.
like on his
Yep.
way to to the thing to go down to Florida or wherever it was. I remember meeting him at a gas station on the interstate with this thing because he couldn't push it off his girlfriend and then. So anyway, that that stuff that sounds kind of wild, right? That happens every
Yep.
single day
Yep.
in the retail space, and personalities are amazing. I mean, every single person is just a character. They're wild, crazy, emotional in a good way. They like our industry is so um, lucky or blessed with most people that are doing the work in our industry at the retail level that are engaging with clients are doing it because there's nowhere else they would rather be. They love feeling a part of the energy and the excitement of like those types of
Sure.
purchases for people, being a part of that for people. And that's cool. So we're doing this for all of that. We don't even have an agenda. I just know that there's something special in our industry, and I care so much about it more than anything else. And it and I hate that the conversation with the public is diamonds are like overpriced and like you should buy lab grown. And I don't hate it because I like disagree with that. I really don't care. I just think that conversation avoids the 99% of the amazingness that our industry is all about, and the history and the specialness that all these things symbolize. That's the whole point, is what they symbolize. Um, and we want to do our part to make that the topic of discussion as much as we can. So that's sort of the reason for this.
Hold that thought.
Um, and we'll see what happens. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, nature was calling.
No, 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 totally get it. Yeah, you got me at the end. That was basically it. That's we don't really know what we're doing at all, but we just think there's something there, and we want to do our part to start
Cool.
some
No, I agree
conversations.
with you. I
Um,
think I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and I really think based on what reactions I had when we did these presentations with Nirov, I think you're onto something. Who knows where it's going to go, but everything came out of it was positive. Um, and you know, there was goodwill, there were sales, there were um, customers referred, there were, you know, um, it became sort of people were calling and requesting to get on the next one. Um, yeah,
yeah,
hey, when are you gonna do the next one? My friend was there and she thought it was really great, and blah blah blah. Yeah, I mean
wow,
it's great for business. It's great for promotion. It's great for reputation.
yeah,
It's great for just doing it. For goodwill. And
yeah,
I think we had the conversation at one point about how things can become adversarial, and I think the greater the level of understanding that the end consumer has, I think the more that can be diffused. That attitude can be diffused.
yeah.
So yeah, I think it's let's see, but it's I think yeah,
Let's see. We'll see how it goes.
cool.
Cool.
I'll send you some of those
Well,
pictures.
Jeff, I
Yeah,
think we're good.
yeah, yeah.
Please, I'm gonna order that book. So, is that
Yes, it
book
is.
orderable?
It is.
Chanting Imagination. I can like get that on Amazon or something.
I would
Okay,
try.
or
I
maybe
would just try to go to New York
through the.
Historical Society because that's where the show is. I just spoke with
Yeah,
his nephew this morning because I wanted to buy a few copies to gift to people. Um, and he said order it from the Historical Society. Yeah, go
that's a
to the
great.
website.
Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna check that. I gotta get that book. I'm a sucker, and this is so like a lower level, but I live for the giant Smithsonian gem book. I don't know if you have that or if you've seen that before. I love it. I give it to.
Right.
It's like my
Sure.
thing. Like I'll ship it to people or
Yeah.
whatever. I think it's so cool. The all the historic jewelry from like the kings and queens.
Yep.
That's so cool.
Yeah. No, I'm a sucker
Yeah.
for books in
Yeah,
general.
so if it's anything like
So
that,
yeah.
mm,
All right. So talk to
heck
you
yeah.
soon.
All right. Well, we'll we'll talk to you soon. Yeah,
All
thank
right,
you
man.
again. I appreciate
Take
it.
care. Have a good night.
Hey everyone, we just want to say thank you again for listening and tuning in to the Carrizza podcast where we talk all things jewelry. We really hope you enjoyed the episode and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks.